Thank you for tuning in to the Voice of Adventure. Today we will be continuing the traveler's story from last month in the Undying Lands. In the last story, a man born from ice walked into town and began helping its impoverished people. The king of that land caught wind of his power to make unmelting ice and tried to force the Iceman to work for him. After refusing, the Iceman was tortured and forced to watch people he helped die. Filled with rage, the Iceman accidentally froze the whole kingdom. Now, a traveler is passing through and tells the Iceman this story. Once upon a time, a young man found himself in the Undying Lands. He woke suddenly in a field of tall grass. The soft texture and warm earth cradled him as he laid there. Staring up at the sky, he saw stars as numerous as the blades of grass around him. Stars of all sizes shone brightly, lighting up the land below. Turning his head, he could just make out the sun setting, casting the sky in golden light. He sat up and saw that this one field stretched to the horizon in every direction. The long green grass continued uninterrupted over the land. No paths, trees, houses, or animals disrupted it. The whole land was painted green from this one field. Although he had no recollection of coming to this land, he felt at peace, embraced by the soft blades of grass, caressed by the amber light of the setting sun and the stars, and welcomed by the warm earth. All this made him not want to leave, so he didn't. He laid back down and for a long while stayed there, feeling a strong sense of tranquility. He couldn't tell how long he laid there, because when he looked at the sky again, the sun and stars hadn't moved. He sat up again, bewildered. He knew he had laid there for a long while, but why hadn't the sun completely set? Curious, he decided to explore. Since everything around him was the same green field, he chose a random direction and started walking. He walked for a long time, feeling the grass brush against his hands and legs with every step. As each blade stroked his skin, he felt an urge to lay back down and enjoy the embrace of the field. But, with a strong resolve, he continued. As there was no way to tell time in this land, he walked until he could no longer overpower his urge to lay in the smooth, soft grass again. It could have been minutes, hours, or even days, but that didn't matter anymore, now that he was embraced by the grass again. He lay there for a long time, looking up at the sky, when suddenly he heard a few voices. He sat up and looked around, but no one was there. Laying back down, he immediately heard them again, these strange voices. He couldn't make them out, yet they felt so familiar. Every time he laid his head on the soft green grass, the voices came through, disrupting his peace. He stood and carefully looked around again, and this time, with the setting sun behind him, he saw a creature far in the distance. It was no more than a light gray dot from this distance. He stared for a short while, wondering if this creature was responsible for the voices he was hearing. He listened closely, but heard nothing. This being the first thing he saw that wasn't part of the field or sky excited him, so he set off to meet it. He walked quickly, hoping it wouldn't take long to reach this mysterious creature. As he approached, which took much longer than expected, he could see that the creature was horse-like in appearance. It had long, strong legs, a large body, and a long neck. Its mane as smooth as silk, blew lightly in the breeze, changing colors as it moved. On its head sat a pure white horn that gave off a faint light. When he got a few hundred feet from this animal, it suddenly looked up and bolted. Off it ran as fast as the wind. The young man could hear the animal chuckle as it ran away, as if delighted to have someone to play with. With nothing else around but the welcoming grass, he went after the horned horse. Even at his top speed, there was no chance of him catching up. The horned horse could run circles around him and laughed every time he got close. Often it let him get within an inch, then bolted again. He didn't know how long they played this game, but they both enjoyed the chase. After the 100th time barely missing, he lay down in the grass, feeling mentally exhausted, but strangely not physically exhausted. Once his head hit the ground, the voices came back. This time they felt less friendly and a little more worried or stressed. Carefully listening, he thought he might be able to make out what they were saying, but all he could hear was that. Slightly frustrated, he sat back up to find the horned horse was right in front of him. "Are you going to run away again?" the young man asked, weirdly expecting the animal to answer. The horned horse stomped its hoof, challenging him to the chase again. "What, you want to go again?" The horned horse nodded in agreement. "Well, I need a break, so give me a little while and we can go again." The horned horse's face showed its disapproval, but unable to force him to continue, it lay down nearby, ready to begin at a moment's notice. They sat in the long grass in silence for many hours. Neither one spoke. Not that the horned horse could speak, but every time he looked at the horned horse, he thought it could speak. "With its horn, it has to be special, right?" the young man thought. "It's also the only creature in this land." Tired of the silence, the young man started to have a one-way conversation with the horned horse. "You know this land makes no sense to me. The sky never changes, the land goes on forever. The grass is so soft and welcoming, and it appears I'm the only one here. I guess other than you." The young man looked at the horned horse, who was just laid there, showing no signs that it was listening. "What is this place? How did I get here? And why do I hear voices when I lay in the grass?" At the last question, the horned horse sat up. It looked at the young man as if interested in the voices he was hearing. "Do you know about the voices?" "Wait, dumb question. You're just a horse." The horned horse stood and laid back down, closer to the young man now. "I guess you want to hear more about them, then. But sadly, there's not much to tell. When I lay my head in the grass, I hear voices that feel so familiar to me, but I can't understand what they're saying. I think the voices are calling out the same thing, but no matter how many times I hear it, I can never understand what they're saying. But it's odd. I feel like I know these voices somehow. Something about them feels so personal, like I knew the people in my life, but I only have hazy memories from before I woke up here." The young man hugged his knees. "I can remember I was a mighty adventurer who slew many foul beasts. But did I do it alone? Did I have a party I traveled with? I can recall each of the beasts. There was a giant boar that terrorized a small village, tearing up fields and houses in its rage. There was also the old wyvern that tried to burn down a city. Luckily, we killed that one before much of the town was in flames, but the hairs on my arms are still singed from the close call with its fire. But I think the greatest of all of them was a mighty dragon. It towered over the buildings in the city, crushing them with its massive feet. Its strong, fiery breath could level a forest. I could still feel the heat from the flames that burned around us when we fought that dragon. I don't know how we managed to survive that battle." Silence hung in the air for a short while, when the young man realized the words he had just said. "Wait, I just said we, us, when talking about these battles. That means I didn't do it alone. So I was part of a party." The young man's smile suddenly faded, as he still couldn't recall the faces or names of these comrades he had. He laid back in the grass for a long time, unsure if his mind fog would ever clear. Suddenly, he started hearing the voices again, but this time louder. The voices called out something the young man could not fully understand. The voices sounded. As he lay there listening intently to the voices, they started to become clearer, slowly, through a lot of concentration. The broken words became whole. He could hear the voices shouting, "Thaddeus! Thaddeus! Thaddeus!" Hearing his name flicked a switch in his head, and suddenly memories of Rowan, Sarah, and Lyra came flooding back. He could recall their grand adventures, close battles, and most importantly, their faces. "Thaddeus!" the voices continued calling. "Come back to us!" Thaddeus quickly stood up, looking for any sign of where these voices were coming from. He strained his eyes for something, anything that would lead him to these voices. But all he saw was the ever-expansive fields of grass. "How can I get out of here? How can I get back to you?" he quietly said aloud. As Thaddeus said these words, he felt a nudge on his shoulder. Turning, he saw the horned horse standing next to him, flicking its long face towards his back. "Are you asking me to get on?" Thaddeus asked, confused at what was going on. Thaddeus thought he saw the horned horse roll its eyes before nodding in agreement. With a little difficulty, Thaddeus mounted the horned horse, and without waiting for him to get situated, the horned horse sped off. Thaddeus almost fell off at the sudden start, but was able to secure himself and hold on to the horse's mane. They raced over the green hills directly towards the setting sun. The blinding light made it impossible for Thaddeus to tell if they were making any headway or just running in circles. As they rode towards the sun, the voices came again and grew, getting louder and more desperate, becoming a deafening chorus. Thaddeus could feel the weight and pain coming from the voices. They sounded like they were shedding tears. As they drew closer, Thaddeus couldn't help tearing up as well. After a long ride, the horned horse suddenly stopped, almost throwing Thaddeus off. Looking forward, he saw they had reached the end of this world. The beautiful colors of the sky were gone, replaced with an off-white shell. In the middle, a little difficult to see, sat a large, pure white door. Thaddeus hopped off the horned horse and slowly walked to the edge of the world. The closer he got to the door, the louder the voices became. As he stood in front of it, they were screaming in his head. Feeling uncertain, he turned back to the horned horse, who stood a stone's throw away. He studied the horse's face, hoping to find the answer to the question he didn't want to ask. Through his ride, he began to understand where he was and what the voices meant. He knew the voices. They were the friends he had ventured with in the waking world. Their calling and desperation showed Thaddeus he was in the in-between, not alive, but not yet dead. If he stayed in this land too long, he would eventually fade into the afterlife. But because he followed the voices of his friends, he now had a choice. This white door may take him to his party and to the battle they were fighting, but it also might take him to the afterlife. He wanted to ask where this door would take him, but knew the horned horse would not give an answer. As he stared into the horse's eyes, the horned horse nodded to the door, as if reading Thaddeus' mind. Thaddeus smiled, understanding what he needed to do. As he was about to speak and thank the horse, and turned and began walking away. With a small chuckle, Thaddeus did the same. On the threshold of the door, he turned back to have one last look at his companion in these undying lands. He watched as the horned horse began to shine. Light spread out from the horse, causing Thaddeus to shield his eyes. Taking a peek, he watched the horned horse's form mold and change into a man, before suddenly disappearing. Thaddeus stood, taking in the landscape he hoped to never see again. After a long minute, he turned and walked through the white door, ready to return to the waking world. Thank you for listening to The Voice of Adventure. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to follow wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also keep up with the stories and see extra content on Instagram at Josiah the Author. Be sure to tune in next month as we end the story about the Iceman and rejoin Thaddeus and his party on their adventure. See you in the next story.